Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Experience AV. I'm Jeremy Elsesser.
And I'm Jim Maltese. Today we're going to be talking intelligibility in the age of COVID. So, hopefully, you hear me a little bit differently right now. I have a few masks on. I've got my standard cotton mask, and to be super careful, I've got my N95 mask, but I hope that I sounded a little bit different with them on. And we recently saw a study put out by Biamp that showed how much masks affect audio. So, Jeremy, do you have that slide that we can put up?
Hey Jim, do you think it'd be okay if I took my mask off at this point in the show? Did we? Or
Fine.
no? All right,
If
thank
you
you.
have to, you look fine.
All
Fine.
right, fine, okay. I'll leave it on for another 10
I
minutes. It's
appreciate.
fine. It's fine. Here's your slide. We'll get it up. Here
You
we
just
go.
look so cool. I feel like I'm in Star Wars.
Okay, well, here we are.
Right.
And let's get back to the program,
Yeah, no,
please.
you can take it off. That's a serious mask. So, Biamp put this out, and we both thought it was fascinating, right? Like, we all sound different when we have masks on. I find myself asking people to repeat themselves one or two times because I just can't hear them like I normally would when they're wearing a mask. And this just showed exactly what's going on. A lot of the high frequencies where a lot of the consonant information is decreased depending on the style of mask you have. Some are worse, some are better, but there is definitely an effect by masks on the audio that's coming out of our mouth. And we thought this was, listen, pretty cool, but what does it do to intelligibility, right? We can see what it does to frequency response and find that's interesting. But as humans, we really want to understand what people are saying. And so we wanted to kind of kick it up a notch, kind of take it to the next level, maybe show off a few, test equipment, some tools here and there, and see if we can measure what effect masks have on intelligibility. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. So measuring intelligibility has come a long way. It started out where, and if you think about it, if people say, yeah, it sounds intelligible, I can understand what they're saying, how would you put a number on it? Right, it's a very subjective thing. In the 40s and 50s, when World War II was happening, and they had submarines, they had planes, and they had a lot of different ways to communicate. They wanted to test the intelligibility of each communication system, and so the folks at Harvard and Baranek and BBN came up with several sets of sentences, I could say, from that are called the Harvard sentences. There are 72 lists of 10 sentences that are phonetically balanced. And so the set of 10 sentences contain all the different sounds the English language has. So if you want to test intelligibility, if you want to test how well a system is putting the information out there so that people can understand it, it makes sense to have a balanced set of words or sentences that hit all the different consonants, hit all the different types of sounds. So they call it phonetically balanced. As an example, they're all made up of monosyllabic words with a two-syllable word thrown in there, but they're very simple phrases. They don't always make sense. Something like the juice of lemons make fine punch. 4 hours of steady work faced us. The boy was there when the sun rose. So they're just odd sentences, but they have a lot of different sounds contained in them. So the idea was they could take whatever system they were studying, read a bunch of these lists, and see how well people understood what was being said. And so, does this radio transmitter work all right? Does this submarine transmitter work all right? How well can people understand what's going on? And we've gotten kind of spoiled in the age of Teams and the age of digital communication, because we should sound pretty good. We should be able to tell the difference between the small pup gnawed a hole in the sock. We should be able to hear all those different sounds. But as an example, one of the sentences is tea served from the brown jug is tasty. And a reporter who was doing some investigation into the origins of this intelligibility heard tea served from a brown jug is tasty as tea soaked in LeBron James is tasty. Yeah,
Well,
that's a little bit of a different take.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as they were doing that, even during the reporting, he heard teeth soaked in the brown jug is tasty. And so that's what these sentences are crafted to do. The sounds are put next to each other so that did I say tea soaked or did I say teeth soaked? And so they want to be able to determine if you can hear those differences as I speak.
Oh, I absolutely. If I can jump in, Jim, just because this is amazing. I'm learning right along with everybody else here in understanding that this is really, it sounds like one of the first standard reference points that was ever created in trying to quantify how intelligible a system is.
Yeah. Yeah. But the problem with it is it's very subjective, right? You're going to have different talkers. You're going to have different listeners. So it's hard to put a number on that.
But,
you know,
to be fair, would it be safe to say that if you had the same person reading the same sentences with the same person listening on the other end, that would be as close as you could get with that model or that system in terms of trying to control the subjectivity of interpreting whether or not something could be understood, right? But to your point, it's still subjective. He just might, or she just might have an amazing ability to make out sounds that somebody else might not be able to. I just think this is really interesting when you're trying to quantify, and I hadn't even thought about from the perspective of military aircraft and the noise level and noise floor and all the variables that can come into a transmission. It's not good enough that you can get a signal through. It's now about making sure that the signal getting through is actually able to be heard and understood the way that it was intended. This is really cool. Please go on. I love getting the history lesson of where this stuff came from.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to start there so that we can keep in mind what we're looking to determine. You know, like we've got to be able to understand all these differences in sounds. So this was a great first step. We started to pay attention to intelligibility and how we perceive all these words, but it wasn't repeatable and not really scalable, and there were some shortcomings to it. And so finally, someone created a computer-based way to measure intelligibility. So they took the information that they gleaned from these sentences, and now they applied it to some binary, like some definite way of defining what intelligibility should be and how do we measure it. And so they came up with RASTI, and that is the Room Acoustic Speech Transmission Index. And so what happened there was you put a sound into a room, it takes into account all the room contributions going on, and it spits out a number between 0 and 1, and it tells you how intelligible that room is.
Jim, real quick. So quickly, RASTI, you would require a tool, I would assume, a special tool or meter that was capable of measuring RASTI.
It was a very, very expensive suitcase.
Oh,
that
really?
had a microphone in, loudspeaker out, and it tested that closed system.
Got it.
And
okay.
So, huge first step, especially for like large room acoustics and things like that. It was a huge advancement, but you can only test that room because it had to know its input and it had to know its own output to make those measurements. Still great, but it was very expensive. It was very complicated. It took a little bit of time to figure out, and we don't need that hassle. And so now, instead of that very expensive suitcase, now we can get away with a handheld device and something that, I have my AL1 that can do it. That RASTI has been retired and has been replaced with Stipa, which is the Speech Intelligibility Index for Public Address. And this is a great leap forward because number one, I can have separate inputs and outputs. The way Stipa works is you have this complicated waveform that has energy spread out equally across all the different frequencies, and it does so in a phonetically balanced way to mimic speech, and so it sounds something like this. So it's a weird signal. It's a weird signal on purpose that goes across all the audio that speech normally would. But now, because it's a known weird signal, I can take a handheld tester. That's a couple of $1,000s, but it's still a handheld tester, and I can capture that sound through a microphone, and I can use that tester to determine how close the signal that was captured by the microphone was to the original known signal.
Got it.
So now this just opened things up completely, right? Because now not only can I test room intelligibility, I can test conferencing intelligibility, I can do all sorts of very interesting things. It also made it very accessible to a lot of different organizations, which was very important. And that's why Stipa is the speech transmission index for public address. They wanted to make sure that life safety systems were intelligible, because if there's an emergency, if there's a fire, if you have to tell people where to go, where they have to muster, they got to understand the message. And so now all of a sudden, because it's easy to test, because it's easy to get those measurements, we can put those intelligibility requirements into specifications for life safety systems, and people can actually be expected to measure it and document that the system is intelligible.
That is that's amazing from my perspective. I love travel, as I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast does, and I remember going through a number of very large train stations and remembering hearing the speakers that were mounted what seemed to be hundreds of feet up in the air, because the train station was massive and there was tens of thousands of people within the train station. There was definitely audio coming out of those speakers, but I could not tell you what it was, the message that was trying to be portrayed. So to your point, if it was, hey, there's a fire, you're going to die, get out, and we can't understand that, that's a real problem. That's a life safety issue. And thus intelligibility takes shape and becomes not just a value to be disregarded, but something that can actually measure how effective you are at clearly transmitting a given signal. I love how you described how it measures the signal and how much it's been changed, or better stated, maybe how close to the original signal is it once it's passed through its transmission system, which is made of the entire AV system, the air, the room that the audio is happening in. It's taking in all of those variables and able to put a number to it. That's mind-blowing. So Jim, question for you. Back to the sentences, if I can just step back a little bit. You mentioned that there was a list of sentences. Is it true that, so would they read a list of 10 sentences, or was it just one sentence to try to quantify? How was that test performed, if you will?
It was a block of 10 sentences because you needed the 10 sentences in that grouping to hit all the different sounds.
Okay, perfect. So then moving forward to RASTI, what was that? Was that a system generated tone similar to Stipa, or was that what was the RASTI approach? How was that test applied?
See, that I forget. It's been a minute. I did a few RASTI tests in the 90s, but I honestly can't remember. I think it was an impulse function that needed to be timed, and then what the room did to that impulse somehow was resolved with the intelligibility index. But that I'm not exactly sure how that worked.
So an impulse can be a number of different signals, but just something that goes high and low very quickly, so you can find that
Yep.
impulse within audio
Yeah.
and measure against that and what's happening to it acoustically.
Yeah, starter pistol, a balloon pop, or something like this. Even people used to be really good at clapping.
Which is also, these are similar signals that you might use to measure reverberation, RT60, those
For
types
sure.
of things. So okay, interesting. So Rasty was really a stepping stone on the way to Stipa, and it sounds to me like what they did is, to your point, they took all of the output of those 10 sentences, or the what'd you call it, a well balanced set of sounds. What did you call
Hmm.
it exactly?
Oh,
Phonetically
phonetically
balanced.
balanced.
So then the Stipa signal, which sounds nothing like human speech at all,
No.
somehow accomplishes that same phonetic balance that you could get out of reading those 10 sentences. What a cool evolution
Yeah.
of that idea into, I think, where you're going with it, which is now it's accessible to all of us AV geeks to apply to all the things that we do and quantify it further.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you like, just to get a little bit deeper on the phonetically balanced, like if you think about speech, um, there's a lot of information in the vowels where we make the longer sounds, and then a lot of the information on speech that helps us understand what's being said is in the consonants, like the all that the consonant sounds, right, where the sibilance is. Um, Another thing that they try to incorporate into these public address systems is that not everyone there is a native speaker. And so, whereas a native speaker might be able to figure out what the sound system is saying, a non-native speaker is going to have a lot more difficulty interpreting what's being said. And so that's where you might have a sliding scale of intelligibility requirements for life safety.
Wow.
Yeah, each user is going to have a different requirement.
Wow. You're just continuing to build on this for me. I hadn't even considered the particulars of accents. And I've personally done a number of projects outside of the country and worked with some amazing team members that are going to be better at understanding the detail of their native language or potentially of English. And so, to your point, going all the way back, reading those 10 sentences, if you're an native English speaking person, and the person listening is a native English speaking person, is going to have a very different result than the same person still saying the same sentences, but potentially somebody from another country, which just, I mean, that further supports how awesome it is that we have a tool like this to take that,
Absolutely.
get rid of that subjectivity and the many variations of subjectivity that can enter into that situation. How cool is that?
Yeah, I love it. It's exciting. I mean, I it's a niche thing. I think it's definitely growing, but it's really exciting to be able to do this. And now, when you have clients or something that says, "Oh no, the conference system sounds terrible. I can't understand what they're saying at the far end," we can put a number on it. And you can do that at staging to determine if it's the technology, or you can put it into the room at commissioning and determine if it's the room effects, if it's the acoustic. So you can really kind of pinpoint where the issues are. You can document how well the system was. Um, if you have a testing lab and it's intelligible from the room under test to the lab, that's good. And if they're complaining about intelligibility, you can do further testing with maybe the problem site. So there are all different ways to use this very simple measurement to really document what's going on with these complex systems.
Well, and you've hit on such an important point here, which is really, at the end of the day, this allows us to no longer have a subjective opinion, but truly have data to support our claims, right? So many of
Yeah.
us, I'm sure, have been doing this for a long time, and you get an audio guy or an audio system, or you come, talk to somebody and you ask, what does it sound like, or how does it sound? Well, it sounds good.
Yep.
That's about as good as you can, right?
Exactly.
But your version of it sounds
Exactly.
good versus my version of it sounds good can be two very, very different things. So, really in our quest of trying to remove subjective human opinion and use science and tools to be able to quantify and put number to these things. As an audio engineer, that is so incredibly powerful to me because, again, like you said, you can't see audio and everybody experiences it a little bit differently. And we're not going to get into that variable right now, but everybody experiences it a little bit differently. So how are you supposed to establish a baseline without having some sort of reference standard? And that's what we're all about. I mean, creating that Stipa signal, that's the reference standard. It's always the same reference standard. You're never deviating away from that reference point, and you're always measuring your ability to hear that same signal coming through your system, stamping the system with how intelligible it is. Well, and that kind of brings us to what we're excited about doing today, because we apply this test all the time. We do this on our systems because it's a way for us to understand how intelligible our AV systems, conference rooms, training rooms, doesn't matter, that we're installing for our clients are. Jim and I got super excited when we saw this chart because we're like, hey, let's pull out the tools and do some intelligibility testing on mass. Because to Jim's point, and when we got on the call, we've all been wearing masks and interacting with people that are wearing masks for the last year. And I certainly can tell a difference between how somebody sounds with a mask and without a mask. I mean, I think we demonstrated that very clearly when we got on the call. Granted, I was a little bit extreme with my painter's mask, but Jim, you were demonstrating a very real situation.
Extremely awesome.
Painter's mask. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm trying to implement it moving forward as standard conference gear, but we'll see how it goes. But you had a really kind of normal situation, maybe a double mask situation, and you definitely sound different. Now,
definitely sound different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for sure.
There it is. So that's a cloth mask and an N95 mask, but I can understand what you're saying. So when you really try to understand what is intelligibility trying to quantify, it's not about whether or not I can hear you. I can definitely hear that there is noise coming out of your mouth and passing through the system and coming out of my headphones, and I can hear you. It's more of a measurement of how I can actually understand you. If I'm actually hearing the words the way that you are saying them and the way that you are intending them. And I will say that I can still understand what you're saying, albeit the sound has changed. And that's what I love so much about this test, is it helps us take that human subjectivity out. Oh, it sounds different to me. It must be less intelligible, right? That's my assumption anyway. And why we wanted to put this together is, well, let's just start testing this and putting numbers to it and use our tools so that it's not our opinion, and see what we come up with.
Yeah. Am I saying teeth soaked or tea soaked? Am I saying teeth soaked or tea soaked? So let's put a number on it.
I love it. What mask do you have to play with today?
My friend, I have cotton mask, N95. I've got a regular disposable surgical mask, and I feel inadequate compared to your painter mask awesomeness, but I've got like a vinyl face shield. I know.
Yay!
It's not, can't compare though. That's it's.
But imagine if we did painter's mask with the shield. Yeah. Wow. That's a new level.
That's stuff.
So I've obviously got the extremely stylish, very convenient painter's mask.
Yes.
Also surgical masks here, and a couple of different cloth masks that we can play with and try to understand what the impact is of those masks on our ability to understand, what a person is saying or how intelligible it is to pass audio through one of those masks. So before we get started, Jim, do we want to talk a little bit about the test approach that we're going to take?
There's nothing I want to do more.
Well, kick us off, my friend. Let's talk a little bit about the test approach.
Yeah, so the test approach, first we have to introduce some of our test equipment. We're going to be using the XL2 on Jeremy's side to receive the audio, and we're going to be sending a few transmitters, different transmitters across. We'll start local, and then maybe we'll use teams to see what the different effect is. I think what I'd like to do first is just get a baseline. Can we agree with the test results that Biamp had? So can we put pink noise into the XL2 and look and see if the masks do indeed drop the high frequency information?
I love it.
Okay.
Okay. So with that, let me pop on over and show everybody the setup that we are working with here. So let me move over to my wide angle camera. Hey, everybody.
Did you just fade on me? Oh my God. That is awesome.
It was a slow fade. That was 2.5 seconds.
Slow fade. Fantastic.
So what we're working with, Jim indicated, this is the XL2. This is the coolest meter in the audio world, or at least in my opinion. It does a lot of stuff. Right now, I've got it connected to my computer so that I can actually share the screen with all of you for who are watching video. There's an XLR cable coming out of XL2 going across my office, and it's connected here to this microphone. This is the measurement microphone that's currently connected to the XL2. Any audio that this microphone picks up is being analyzed by the XL2. Over here, we have our talk box. This is also a very cool device. This device allows us to output a signal at a known reference standard. That known reference standard is 60 dB at 1 meter, also known as the standard talker. That is a very relevant distance for how far the talk box is away from the microphone here. I've got it at 36 inches, just paying a little homage to the standard talker side of things. One of the signals that this is able to output is Stipa, which that is not it. That is pink noise. That is the Stipa signal, okay? So that allows us to put a reference standard Stipa signal, play it at 3 feet, pick it up by our XL2 measurement microphone, and display what the RTA looks like. And then I think Jim had a great idea. What we're going to do is we're going to take each of our masks, and I'm actually going to pass the mask down over the top of the XL2 like this, so that we can all watch live what it's doing to the curve, to the frequency response, and Jim will hopefully have some colorful commentary to go along with that.
Excellent.
So let's hop over to our XL2 page. How about that? Live.
Good looking page, man.
Thank you.
Good looking page.
Appreciate that. All right, so what you're seeing here is a digital representation of my XL2. You can actually USB these things into your computer and get a live feed right off of it, which is really cool for the purposes of training and this neat little video that you're watching right now. So what's up on the RTA here is, on the XL2 is our SL meter RTA. It's set to RTA mode. You can actually see that it's picking up live my voice as I'm talking and displaying it on the screen. So I'm going to be quiet. Here's a clap. So you can kind of see that we've got this live audio analyzer situation going on here. So with that, let's go ahead and do our first test, and no mask. We're just going to play the Stipa signal. We're going to do, no, I'm sorry. I messed that up.
Yep.
Noise. Yes. So we're going to play pink noise, and we're just going to see what the impact that each mask has on the curve. Is that right?
Take it. Yeah.
Okay. Jim, since I'm going to be away from my mic, I'd appreciate it if you would do the talking. I'm going to move us over to my wide angle camera here and get going.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Okay, so this is pink noise coming into the mic, and you can see it's got fairly equal energy going over all the different frequencies, all the different octaves. So we're going to start out with our disposable mask. Let's see what happens to it. Just sliding it on now. And you can definitely see those high frequencies starting to dip. You see everything starting to dip, but the curve is changed with those high frequencies, for sure. And just to get a reference, this is the difference between me talking like this and me talking like this. So some of the high frequencies have gone off, and now the high frequencies are back. So that's the effect of a disposable mask. Next, is the ultra sexy, like, neoprene spandex thing. I have one of those. Here we go. I've got mine. Let's see what happens to the curve. Yeah, the whole thing kind of dipped on that. Definitely the high frequency. So this is the difference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It seems to have less of an effect than the surgical mask. The shape of the curve doesn't change, but definitely, I guess it was around, well, I'll say like 12K. There was a definite dip from that mask. Now he's just got the awesome purple painter mask, my favorite star. I'm just going to call it Star Wars. And let's see what happens there. Well, hello. Yeah, and you can actually hear how it changes the tone of the noise. That's dramatic. I don't even know. That's probably the same thing as me going just like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Test, 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 test. 1, 2, 3. And then coming back. So, yeah, we agree with Biamp for sure. 2 masks? Now you're just getting crazy. All right, let's go for it. So we've got the disposable going off with the ultra sleek. Disposable first, ultra sleek and sexy on the outside, putting it over. And yeah, definitely changes the shape dramatically. So that's the difference between this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The frosty air passed through the coat versus this, the frosty air passed through the coat. Cool. So we totally agree with Biamp. There is definitely a huge effect on the frequency response with a mask.
So the chart is verifiable, if you will. We verified just with some basic tools and testing that, yeah, the mask is changing the frequency response of the signal.
But what does it do to intelligibility? Does it matter?
Can you still understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
And you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? That's what I want to know.
We're gonna find out if I get to use this as an excuse or not. Okay, so we established the baseline. We know that there's a frequency response. Now we want to do some Stipa testing.
Yes. Yeah. Let's. I mean, we kind of explained it already, but let's show the folks what the Stipa test looks like on the XL2.
Okay. So let me get my XL2 changed over to Stipa mode here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Stipa mode on the XL2. Quick orientation, what you see here on the screen, the top number that is changing over to question marks, that's the main STI score. You're going to get a number between 0 and 1. That's the quantified number that it is measuring and ultimately applying to the overall intelligibility test. It'll give you that number. Below that, you have a AEQ, which is SPLA weighted over the time of the test averaged. And then A slow is actual live SPLA weighted slow being displayed on the screen. Below that, you actually have a letter grade. Just because a number wasn't good enough, the Stipa folks thought they would be kind and give us the ABCDF letter grade system that you can also attach to how well the sound can be reproduced in its original form through whatever system, tool, mask, or environment that you are testing it through.
It's kind of counterintuitive to the whole thing, right? Because we're spending all this time and energy to put a number on it, and the end result is still subjective words like excellent, good, fair, poor, but it's an objective subjectivity, hopefully.
Wow. I'm gonna
There.
I'm gonna give that to you, and we're just gonna move on.
Do
So,
it.
Jim, before we go into the STI test, is there a standard number that we're shooting for? Like, what makes an A plus? Is there any? Does the Stipa standard itself mention any target minimums, or is there any levels or grades of intelligibility? Obviously, you have this A plus. I know AV9000 has a standard around Stipa. What's the baseline number we're looking for here?
Yeah. So AQAV and AV9000 shoot for, I believe, 0.62.
Higher than
To give you a
0.62?
sense, greater than 0.62.
Greater than 0.62.
So yeah. It's on a scale from 0 to 1. And I believe excellent is from 0.8 to 1. So if you're above 0.8, you are going to have excellent intelligibility. That's where really there's going to be no change in the sound. I could be right next to you versus using the entire system, and you should be able to understand the words the same way. 0.8 and above is excellent. It's fantastic. Good is, I think, 0.7 to 0.8, and that's fine. It's kind of maybe not like old POTS phones where you only had 3 kilohertz bandwidth, and that you can't tell the difference between an S and an F or a D and a P because you just don't have that information. And so there is some intelligibility. That would probably be a fair intelligibility. But like Teams or like digital phones, with 7 kilohertz bandwidth, that should definitely get you in the good range. 0.7 to 0.8, and then less than 0.7, it falls off from there. A lot of specs I see say for life safety, you've got to be above 0.55. But like we said before, each agency, each organization has a different requirement. So DoD requires 0.7 or above. And I'm sure every government agency or any organization that has life safety intelligibility requirements will make their own decisions. The nice thing is we can calibrate it, right? You can bring people to a middle school gymnasium, which is going to have poor acoustics, measure it and say, all right, the acoustics in this gymnasium where it sounds like this is probably going to be like 0.4, 0.5. We did a huge lobby in New York where just wicked slap echo, huge volume. It was marble surfaces everywhere. We couldn't get the intelligibility above 0.44. And to give you a sense of what that did to the presenter, they couldn't talk because the echo was so bad. So the intelligibility was poor, the echo was so bad, and they had an intelligibility score of 0.44. That is unacceptable.
Was that on Park Avenue?
It was on Park Avenue, maybe. Possibly. Yeah, maybe. For conference rooms, definitely looking for 0.62, 0.7 or above. You're looking for that good to excellent audio. There's no reason not to.
Okay. So is it fair to say that the number, since it's 1 being perfect or 100%, that it's really a percentage? So the number is a percentage of how much of the original signal is able to be reproduced, it sounds like, at the end of the day.
I think that's a good way of explaining it. Yeah.
Okay. So then let's do it, right? Let's do our first Stipa test and see what it comes out. Okay. So I'm going to turn on Stipa. This is not Stipa. Okay. Here's Stipa. Stay with me, Jim. Stay with me. Come on, buddy. We're good. We got this.
I got you. Yeah. We're professionals.
Okay, so we have the Stipa sound going. I'm going to go ahead and hit play on the XL2, which will start the measurement. So I will be quiet while it is running, and we are starting now. Okay.
0.91. I mean, A plus, excellent. It better be, right? I mean, the generator, the audio generator is 3 feet from the microphone. So it better be really good.
With nothing in between and acoustic material on the wall. I mean, it should be fantastic, right? Best case, if you will, in this room environment.
Also interesting to note, best case, you're basically right next to it and it's still 0.91. You're never going to get it perfect. There's always going to be some
loss,
room effect. There's going to be some loss in translation. This is quantifiable loss in translation.
If I moved the microphone closer to the speaker, would that number potentially go up?
It could. I think it would.
Okay. Do we want to test that, or do we want to move on to Let's go to masks. See, we can go down. We can go down too many rabbit holes here when you get the tools set up. So, no mask. We've got 0.91. I'm going to make a quick note here just to reference it. Good. Okay. So now I'm going to rig up the. What was the first mask we did before? Was it the surgical?
Yes, surgical.
Okay, let's go surgical. So I'm going to rig up the surgical mask to stay on the talk box here. Bear with me.
You got one of them mask belt extenders?
You know I do.
Fantastic.
It's the only way to get it around the giant head that is the talk box. Okay. So, just a quick jump over here so everybody can see what we've got going on. I've got my talk box strapped up with the surgical mask so that we can run the Stipa test through it. Okay, so Stipa signal on, and here we go with the test.
Interesting. No change.
Did you see how it creeped up at the end there? It kind of creeped up right at the end and leveled out at 0.91. So we're seeing 0.91 with no mask. We're seeing 0.91 with a surgical mask. Mm-hmm. Are we going cloth next?
Yeah, I think so. If I remember correctly, I don't think this these two, the disposable and the what'd you call this, the neoprene or the spandex mask, had too much of an effect, but the cloth mask did have an effect.
Okay, I am getting a cloth mask rigged up. Please excuse my delay. Okay. Boom. Oh, come on, baby. There we go. Okay. So now we've got the blue cloth mask over the top. We're going to turn on the Stipa signal and we're going to record. So, like, no difference, right?
No difference.
Okay, so let's do the double mask.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, I mean, what we are measuring is there's no intelligibility loss. There's no difference in intelligibility when someone is wearing a mask and you're standing 3 feet away from someone.
Correct.
Okay.
That is what we're saying. If you're standing face to face with somebody, you are not having an intelligibility loss. Because again, that standard talker reference point, right? It's at 3 feet. That's a comfortable distance to stand away from someone and have a normal volume sounding conversation. So what I've got here is I've got 2 masks, both the surgical and the cloth. I'm going to have to go hold it on the talk box when we do the measurement here. So
okay,
I'm going to go ahead and turn on the signal. I'm going to place it over the talk box like so. And I'm going to go ahead and hit record now.
cool. Okay, so we saw a little jump, and that's the difference in intelligibility between this and this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Definitely sounds different, but I can understand you. So we took a 0.88, so that was basically a 3% reduction.
Yeah.
On the double mask.
3% loss in intelligibility.
Okay, just for fun, can I throw on the Star Wars mask? Do we got time? Okay, this is what you've been waiting for the entire time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's
okay.
I think everyone's waiting for it.
Okay, all right, fine. This is why we're actually here today, everybody. Okay, let me take a moment. We've got the mask.
Oh yeah.
We got to rig this thing, which requires some adjustment here. There we go. Here we go. Okay.
I mean, do you have to pay extra for the purple, or that's just the way they come?
You know how I like purple, Jim. Boom.
Fantastic.
All right. So here we go. We're going to turn on the signal. And we're going to go ahead and hit record now. Face mask, STI. Not much different.
No, not much different from the 2 mask.
8.87 to, so we lost another percentage.
Yeah. And that had a dramatic effect on the frequency response, but not that much in terms of not that much loss in intelligibility from 3 feet away. But
agreed.
What about like over a conference, right? I mean, if we're further away, if we're in a bigger room, if we're in a bigger space, obviously it's going to get worse. But did you want to measure through Teams?
Oh, you
see what that's like?
Yeah, I want to measure. So now we're adding in the platform. We will still we'll still probably be within that 3 feet range because of where our tools are at. And so, what you're going to get with expanding the range is more room contribution, more air in between that signal source and the microphone picking it up. So I can appreciate that. But yeah, let's do a Teams test so we can at least enter in a conferencing platform. Just so we can understand, what is a conferencing platform doing to intelligibility with no masks? And then does it contribute even more loss because of who knows what?
and this is the cool thing about Stipa is that we're just measuring the speech transmission through whatever system we want to test. So the system was from your generator to the microphone. Now the system is from my generator, my microphone, my computer, the interwebs, your computer, into your speakerphone, into your microphone. So it's a much more complex system.
Wow. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of tests here, right? We're going to do the first test where you hold up the talk box with the Stipa signal coming through, Stand By Me style.
Anything. Yep. Yeah.
I just said Stand By Me. I totally had the wrong movie reference there.
I was with you.
And it's forever documented, so that one's going to hurt. So never mind the movie reference. Jim's going to hold the talk box.
Yes. Like Corey Feldman in Stand By Me.
Damn it. Ouch. Okay, so he's going to hold the talk box, running the Stipa signal. I'm going to change my setup over here so that the Stipa signal is coming out of my little Polycom speaker. I'm going to put my measurement microphone near that speaker, and we're going to measure Stipa coming across the entire United States of America.
Oh my God.
From Long Island to Arizona. I mean, not all the way, but pretty close. Using Teams, and we're going to test STI. So, Jim, when you're ready, go ahead and turn on Stipa.
Okay, so this will be baseline, no mask, through Teams.
Okay.
And my talk box did something bad. Hang on. What happened?
Did you lose power?
I don't think so.
Please excuse. Oh, and we're back. We're back. Okay. So I'm going to change over to my speaker. I'm going to hit play on the test, and then I'm going to change it back, and we'll talk about it. So here we go. Okay. So we got 0.90 here.
Really not bad. Very similar to what you had going direct from the generator in the same room to the microphone, which is pretty impressive with Teams. I mean, that's impressive.
Do you have an issue with Teams? Is it a Microsoft thing?
Listen, I'm all in with Teams and Microsoft. It's just it's band limited. I think it's only 7 kilohertz audio.
It's like so insulting. Could you imagine just walking up to somebody and being like, "You're so band limited"?
But fantastic.
All right. Fantastic. So let's try the same thing with just the surgical mask.
Got it. Okay. All right, are you ready?
We're ready. Well, so that was really interesting. The measurement went really down far there at the end, and I'm curious, can we run that test one more time? I need to make sure that there was no movement on my end. Let's do that test one more time, Jim.
You got it. You ready to go?
Ready to go. Okay, so now we got point 81, which I feel very good that we did a good job of doing the test. So that was with a surgical mask. And that was a significant reduction, which we did not experience over here. So do you think that that might be related to Teams' band limitations if it is experiencing, because now we're going over a conference call, right? There's a number of variables.
Yeah.
We could be degrading right now during our call, and that could be impacting intelligibility by reducing overall quality or scaling down or scaling up the quality of the call.
Yep. Yep.
So do you want to do a cloth mask now?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get a cloth mask going, and then maybe we'll finish up with the vinyl face shield.
Ooh. You sure do know how to get
All right.
me excited.
I know.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, so 0.84. So the cloth mask in this situation actually performed better.
Right. Right. And I should say to do
Than the
to
surgical
do
did.
proper Stipa, we need to be doing 5. Like we need to take this measurement from the same position 5 times and get within 0.03 Stipa. So we're honestly there, close to it. But any spurious readings would kind of be thrown out if we were doing it. I think for the show, this is perfect, just to get a sense of what's going on. But all these different readings would get fleshed out with repeated tests if we were really putting our name to it.
Sounds good. Well, let's do the coup de grace here. Let's have the full plastic.
Oh yeah, go. This is how I make sure when my talk box goes to sleep, I make sure he's got his face shield on, just in case.
You're a good talk box daddy.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so 0.68 STI with the face shield. That was a significant reduction.
Yeah. Yeah. And it should be, right? I mean, that's a big old piece of plastic going right in front of the loudspeaker. So
how interesting. This has been a lot of fun to pull out the test tools and, like you said, at least put some numbers to it, get a general sense of what the level of impact of these masks are. So, Jim, I think we are coming close to time here and have accomplished the test that we had set out. What are your takeaways, man? What are your learnings? What do you think?
I from the biamp slide, I thought masks were going to have a larger effect on intelligibility. But boiling it down to really what it is, can you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? You can with masks. There might be a few words, there might be a few syllables that don't make it through, or phonemes that don't make it through, some sounds, but you can piece it together because words and talking are filled with clues. So I expected more of a difference, but I'm reconciling it in my head because it kind of makes sense. We can still understand each other with masks, even though the audio is drastically affected.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I'll add a couple of things. I had probably two major takeaways, one of them being very similar to yours. The first one is a thank you to you for the history lesson, because I learned some things about the history of intelligibility that for me helped reinforce the purpose of the test and why it's an important test to do and why it's an important number to have in terms of quantifying the performance of a system. So that was awesome, getting the context of where it came from as opposed to just doing the test and getting the number was fantastic. I honestly thought that there was going to be more of an impact from an intelligibility standpoint. And like you, I'm kind of reconciling my last 12 months of experiences and recognizing that just because something doesn't sound the same doesn't mean you can't understand it, or doesn't mean that it reduces your ability to understand it. And so my takeaways from today are, unless you're going to put on a painter's mask or a plastic shield, that wearing a mask is really negligible in terms of the impact on intelligibility and your ability to understand somebody, at least in that 3-foot face-to-face conversational situation. So I'm surprised, because I just thought it was going to have more intelligibility impact all the way around.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, do you have any final remarks, Jim?
No, I just wanted to thank some of the people who have believed in us and who have supported us, like our definitely our friends at Shure, who are helping us sound great, to the show and in my ears. We really appreciate the support, and to our friends at Carnegie Miller, the K&M folks who let our microphones float like they do. I just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to those teams.
Awesome. I also would like to just add one additional quick thank you there to Shane and Jalen over at ProTech Marketing for helping bring Shure and K&M together for us. Again, just really appreciate the support in helping us launch this podcast. The last comment that I had is I just wanted to share with everybody on the show a little story before we sign off. This is actually our third take of this podcast. And for anybody who was on the original live podcast on Facebook and listened to it all the way through, thank you. And I'm sorry, all at the same time, because there was this horrible audio popping issue that we were not aware of. And we went ahead and did the whole broadcast live with that audio popping issue. Not only the stream had the popping audio issue, but the recording had the popping audio issue, which caused us to dig very deep into our technical setup to understand what was going on. And then it took us almost a month to figure it out. There was some deep gremlins in the system. We did another take on the episode, still didn't get the audio nailed. So this is our third take, and I'm just laughing and crying, but mostly laughing at this point, because it's an episode on intelligibility, and the thing we've been struggling with the most is getting intelligibility out of our audio recording. So I'm thankful, Jim, thanks for partnering with me on this. This has been a hard show to do with all the technical stuff that we had going on, but we persevered, and I'm really excited to bring this final version of this episode. So thanks everybody for hanging in there with us so that we could get our proverbial stuff together and produce some high quality content for all of you. So with that, thank you very much. This is episode 2, Experience AV. I'm Jeremy Elsesser signing off till next week.
See y'all later.